Greetings, weary traveler. Tonight, I invite you to journey with me to a time of ancient legends, where the skies above Camelot glowed with the light of hope, and shadows of betrayal loomed just beyond the horizon. This is the tale of King Arthur, the once and future king, and Merlin, the greatest sorcerer to ever walk the land. Together, they forged a kingdom built on honor, courage, and magic. But, as in all great stories, darkness was never far behind. The swords clashed, oaths were made, and destinies were written in the stars. But before we begin, I want you, my dear listener, to comment down below where you're from and what time it currently is. Now settle in, wrap yourself in your coziest blanket, and drift into the world of Arthurian legend, where magic reigns, and kingdoms rise, only to fall once more into the mists of time. Camelot stood as the heart of a fractured kingdom. Political instability hung in the air. Threats from neighboring warlords and restless factions within the court loomed constantly. King Uther Pendragon ruled with an iron fist. But age and war had wearied him. He was no longer the strong king who had once united the tribes. His health was failing. His enemies sensed the kingdom's vulnerability. With no clear heir to the throne, whispers of rebellion stirred. And yet, in the midst of this turmoil, there was hope. Though only one man knew it. Merlin, the enigmatic sorcerer, kept to the shadows, hiding from the court, observing the slow decay of the kingdom he once helped shape. His face bore the wisdom of centuries. His eyes held visions of a future only he could see. A future where a king would rise from the ashes of Uther's reign. A king whose destiny was written in the stars. And yet, the time was not right. The boy who would be king had not yet been born. Merlin waited, in silence, for the prophecy to unfold. The prophecy. It had come to Merlin in a vision many years ago. On a night when the stars burned brighter than ever, in the depths of the ancient forests. A king would be born of noble blood. He would wield a blade of legend, Excalibur, and he would unite the warring factions of Britain under one banner. Camelot would become a beacon of hope, justice, and prosperity. But the path to that future was fraught with peril. Dark forces lingered in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. Merlin knew that his role was crucial, not as a leader, but as a guide, a protector of the young king yet to be born. It was during a stormy night that Merlin's vision began to come to life. Queen Igraine, Uther's secret love, gave birth to a son, Arthur, born under mysterious circumstances, conceived through magic. Merlin had arranged the birth, ensuring that Arthur's arrival would be shielded from those who wished the Pendragon line to end. Uther's enemies were many, and the child's life was in danger from the moment he took his first breath. Merlin acted swiftly. He took the newborn Arthur into hiding. Uther was heartbroken, but he understood. The boy could not remain in Camelot. Not yet. Arthur was placed in the care of Sir Ector, a loyal knight who had served Uther faithfully. Sir Ector raised Arthur as his own, teaching him the ways of combat, honor, and chivalry. Arthur grew up unaware of his true heritage. He believed himself to be a simple squire, unknowing of the grand destiny that awaited him. Meanwhile, Camelot grew more unstable. Uther's grip on the throne weakened with each passing year. Rival lords circled like vultures, eager to claim the kingdom for themselves. The court was rife with intrigue and betrayal. Merlin watched, knowing that the time for Arthur's return would soon come. But until then, he had to protect the boy from afar, using his magic to guide Arthur's growth and prepare him for the challenges ahead. Merlin's visions grew darker as the years passed. He saw battles, betrayals, and the rise of an enemy that would seek to destroy everything Arthur was destined to build. But he also saw hope. The sword in the stone, Excalibur. It appeared to him in dreams, gleaming in the sunlight, waiting for the one true king to claim it. Merlin knew that when the sword appeared, it would be the signal that Arthur's time had come. As Uther's health continued to decline, the kingdom edged closer to collapse. The lords who had once served the king with loyalty now schemed against him. Without an heir to unite them, they saw an opportunity to seize power. Civil war seemed inevitable. Uther's enemies grew bolder. Raids along the borders increased, and whispers of rebellion echoed through the halls of Camelot. Merlin sensed the tension growing. The balance of power was tipping. He spent many nights in the ancient forests, communing with the forces that governed fate, seeking guidance. And then, the moment he had been waiting for arrived. A vision came to him in the dead of night. He saw Arthur, fully grown, a sword in his hand, leading the knights of Camelot into battle, uniting the kingdom under one rule. But this future was not guaranteed. For every vision of triumph, there was another of darkness, betrayal, and the fall of Camelot. With this knowledge, Merlin returned to the kingdom, waiting for the right moment to act. He kept his counsel, revealing his plans only to a small group of trusted knights. They would be the foundation of Arthur's rule. Loyal men, brave and true. They would help guide the young king when the time came. Merlin's task was to ensure that the prophecy unfolded as it was meant to. He had seen the future, but the path to it was perilous. Many would seek to destroy Arthur before he could even rise. As the final days of Uther's reign approached, Merlin felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him. He knew that soon, very soon, the time would come to reveal Arthur to the world. The boy who would be king was no longer a child. His training was almost complete. The sword in the stone would soon appear, and with it, the test of Arthur's worth. Camelot stood as the heart of a fractured kingdom. Political instability hung in the air. Threats from neighboring warlords and restless factions within the court loomed constantly. King Uther Pendragon ruled with an iron fist. But age and war had wearied him. He was no longer the strong king who had once united the tribes. His health was failing. His enemies sensed the kingdom's vulnerability. With no clear heir to the throne, whispers of rebellion stirred. And yet, in the midst of this turmoil, there was hope. Though only one man knew it. Merlin. Merlin, the enigmatic sorcerer, kept to the shadows, hiding from the court, observing the slow decay of the kingdom he once helped shape. His face bore the wisdom of centuries. His eyes held visions of a future only he could see. A future where a king would rise from the ashes of Uther's reign. A king whose destiny was written in the stars. And yet, the time was not right. The boy who would be king had not yet been born. Merlin waited, in silence, for the prophecy to unfold. The prophecy. It had come to Merlin in a vision many years ago. On a night when the stars burned brighter than ever, in the depths of the ancient forests. A king would be born of noble blood. He would wield a blade of legend, Excalibur, and he would unite the warring factions of Britain under one banner. Camelot would become a beacon of hope, justice, and prosperity. But the path to that future was fraught with peril. Dark forces lingered in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. Merlin knew that his role was crucial. not as a leader, but as a guide, a protector of the young king yet to be born. It was during a stormy night that Merlin's vision began to come to life. Queen Igraine, Uther's secret love, gave birth to a son, Arthur, born under mysterious circumstances, conceived through magic. Merlin had arranged the birth, ensuring that Arthur's arrival would be shielded from those who wished the Pendragon line to end. Uther's enemies were many, and the child's life was in danger from the moment he took his first breath. Merlin acted swiftly. He took the newborn Arthur into hiding. Uther was heartbroken, but he understood. The boy could not remain in Camelot. Not yet. Arthur was placed in the care of Sir Ector, a loyal knight who had served Uther faithfully. Sir Ector raised Arthur as his own, teaching him the ways of combat, honor, and chivalry. Arthur grew up unaware of his true heritage. He believed himself to be a simple squire, unknowing of the grand destiny that awaited him. Camelot had become a kingdom adrift. King Uther had passed from this world without naming a successor. His once mighty court now fractured into warring factions. Knights, lords, and nobles all laid claim to the throne, each seeking to fill the power vacuum left behind. With no clear heir, chaos reigned. Battles broke out across the land. Alliances shifted like the winds, and the people of Camelot lived in fear of what was to come. Merlin watched the kingdom fall apart, his heart heavy. Uther's death had been inevitable, yet the consequences were far worse than even he had foreseen. He knew Arthur's time was drawing near. The boy, now a young man, had been raised far from the political intrigue of the court. His life had been simple, humble, but destiny had a way of finding those it sought. One cold morning, as the people of Camelot gathered in the great courtyard near the temple, a strange sight greeted them. There, in the center of the square, stood a sword embedded deep in a stone. Its hilt gleamed with an otherworldly light, and etched into the blade were ancient words that few could decipher. Those who could read the inscription trembled at its meaning. It declared that only the rightful king of Britain could draw the sword from the stone. It was a test, a sign that the true heir to the throne would be revealed. Word spread quickly, and soon knights and nobles from across the land came to Camelot to try their hand at pulling the sword free. One by one, they approached the stone, their hands wrapped around the hilt, but none could budge it. The people murmured in fear and frustration. If no one could pull the sword, then perhaps Camelot was doomed to remain without a king. The factions grew bolder in their claims. Battles erupted just beyond the city walls, and the kingdom teetered on the brink of civil war. Merlin, though silent, knew what the sword represented. It was a test not of strength but of destiny. On the day of the great tournament, Arthur stood among the squires, watching the knights compete in the justs. He had grown tall and strong, his training under Sir Ector complete. He had no idea of his royal lineage. To him, he was just the son of a knight, destined to live a life of service. But fate had other plans. As the tournament progressed, Arthur's foster brother, Sir Kay, realized he had forgotten his sword back at their camp. In a panic, he sent Arthur to retrieve it. Arthur rushed through the streets of Camelot, searching for a weapon to bring to Kay. His path led him to the courtyard of the temple, where the sword in the stone stood, untouched since it had first appeared. Without a second thought, Arthur approached the stone. The square was empty, the crowd still watching the tournament. His eyes fell upon the gleaming hilt, and something stirred within him. It was as though the sword called out to him, its presence both familiar and mysterious. He reached out, his hand gripping the hilt, and with a single, effortless motion, he pulled the sword free. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The blade shimmered in the morning light, and Arthur stared at it in disbelief. He had no idea what he had just done. All he knew was that he had found a sword for Sir Kay. He rushed back to the tournament, handing the weapon to his brother. But word of the sword's removal quickly spread. Whispers filled the air as knights and lords gathered in the courtyard to see for themselves. When they saw that the sword was gone from the stone, shock rippled through the crowd. Arthur, a mere squire, had done what none of them could. The murmurs of disbelief grew louder, and soon, the nobles demanded answers. It was then that Merlin appeared. He stepped forward from the shadows, his presence commanding the attention of all. The old wizard's eyes gleamed with knowledge and power as he approached Arthur. In front of the gathered court, Merlin spoke the words that would change the course of history. "This is Arthur," Merlin said, "the true-born son of Uther Pendragon, the rightful heir to the throne of Camelot." Gasps filled the courtyard. Arthur looked at Merlin, confusion clouding his features. He had never known of his royal blood, never imagined that he was anything more than a squire. But Merlin's words hung heavy in the air. Some of the knights fell to their knees in reverence, recognizing the weight of the prophecy. Others, however, were less convinced. "How can this boy be king?" one lord shouted. "He is a commoner, raised in the household of a knight. He knows nothing of ruling a kingdom." Murmurs of agreement rose from the crowd. Though the sword had been pulled from the stone, not all were ready to accept Arthur as their king. He was an unknown figure, a boy with no experience in leadership. But Merlin stood firm. "The sword was not meant for the strong," Merlin said. "It was meant for the rightful king. Arthur is that king. He will lead Camelot to greatness. He will unite the realm." Arthur stood silent, his mind reeling from the revelation. He had always believed his fate was tied to Sir Ector and his duties as a squire. Now, everything had changed. The weight of the sword in his hand felt heavier than ever. He looked at Merlin, seeking answers, but all the wizard offered was a knowing smile. The court was divided. Some swore loyalty to Arthur, pledging their swords and their lives to him. Others remained skeptical, unwilling to accept a boy raised in obscurity as their ruler. But the sword had been drawn, and the prophecy had been fulfilled. Arthur's journey was only just beginning. As the day came to a close, Merlin took Arthur aside, away from the eyes of the court. "Your destiny is not yet fully revealed," the wizard said. "But know this, you were born to be king. The sword has chosen you. Now you must choose to embrace your fate." Arthur looked down at the sword in his hand. His heart was heavy with uncertainty, but deep within, he felt the stirrings of something greater. He was not just a squire anymore. He was Arthur Pendragon, the king of Camelot. Arthur stood before the grand hall of Camelot, the weight of the crown heavy upon his brow. The coronation had been a grand affair, attended by those loyal to the prophecy, yet shadows still lingered in the corners of the room. Not all had accepted him as king. Some lords, emboldened by their own ambitions and doubts, refused to bend the knee. They saw him as a boy, an unproven king, one raised far from the intrigues of the court. As Arthur sat upon the throne, his gaze scanned the gathered faces. Merlin stood at his side, ever watchful. His presence both a comfort and a reminder of the ancient powers at play. "Your reign begins today," Merlin said quietly. "But the true test lies ahead." Indeed, the challenges came swiftly. Barely a fortnight had passed since the coronation when word reached Camelot of unrest in the north. Several lords, chief among them Lord Boar, openly defied Arthur's rule. They declared themselves independent of the crown. Their armies began to gather, their banners raised in rebellion. Arthur's grip on the throne was tenuous, and without swift action, his reign could crumble before it had even begun. "War is inevitable," Arthur said one evening as he and Merlin stood on the parapets of Camelot. The cold wind whipped at his cloak. "But I want to unite this kingdom, not tear it apart." Merlin nodded, his eyes distant. "There are ways to win without bloodshed, but sometimes conflict is the only way forward." Arthur sighed. "I don't wish to rule through fear. I want Camelot to be a place of justice, of peace." "Peace," Merlin murmured. "That is a rare thing for a king to have. Rarer still for a young king." With Merlin's counsel, Arthur sent emissaries to the rebellious lords, seeking to negotiate terms. But diplomacy failed. The lords were entrenched in their ambitions, unwilling to recognize Arthur's claim. They gathered their forces and prepared for war. And so, Arthur was left with no choice but to raise an army of his own. As his knights prepared for battle, Arthur called upon Merlin once more. "I need your help," he said. "These men do not trust me. They do not know me. They will. In time," Merlin said, his voice calm. "But there is something else you need. Something more than armies or politics." Arthur frowned. "What do you mean?" "Knights," Merlin replied. "Loyal knights. Men who will stand by you. Not because of the crown you wear, but because of the man you are." Thus began the formation of what would become the greatest order in all of Britain, the Knights of the Round Table. Arthur began to gather the most noble and virtuous knights in the land. Men who valued honor, loyalty, and courage above all else. Among the first to join his cause was Lancelot, a knight of unmatched skill and bravery. Known throughout the kingdom for his valor in battle, Lancelot knelt before Arthur in the great hall, his sword laid at the king's feet. "My sword is yours, my king," he said, "for as long as I live." Gawain followed soon after, a knight renowned for his unwavering sense of justice and his loyalty to his family. Then came Percival, young yet wise beyond his years, his heart full of a purity that few knights could match. With these men by his side, Arthur's court began to take shape. The Round Table was more than just a council of warriors. It was a symbol of equality, of unity. Each knight who sat at the table had an equal voice, regardless of their rank or title. It was Arthur's way of showing that, under his rule, all men were equal before the law. All had a part to play in the future of Camelot. But even as Camelot's walls were built higher, and its people began to speak of Arthur's reign with hope, external threats loomed on the horizon. Across the sea, whispers of war reached Camelot's ears. The kingdoms to the east, jealous of Camelot's growing power, began to plot their own invasions. And though peace had been won within, Arthur knew that the true test of his reign had yet to come. Despite the gathering storms, Arthur was determined to make Camelot a beacon of justice, a symbol of hope in a world ravaged by darkness. He and his knights worked tirelessly to bring order to the land, to settle disputes among the lords, to protect the weak and the innocent. But the path was not always clear, nor was it easy. In the quiet moments of doubt, Arthur would seek Merlin's wisdom. "Am I doing the right thing?" he asked one night as they sat by the fire. "There is so much at stake. So many lives depend on me. What if I fail?" Merlin smiled softly, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "No king rules without doubt, Arthur. Even the greatest of kings are haunted by it. But it is in those moments, when the weight of the crown feels heaviest, that you must trust in yourself, and in those who stand beside you." As the seasons passed, Camelot grew into a city of legend. Its towers reached toward the heavens. Its people lived under the rule of a just and fair king. And the Knights of the Round Table became a force to be reckoned with. Each knight, bound by a code of honor, served not just their king, but the ideals of justice and chivalry that Arthur so fervently believed in. But even with his trusted knights and Merlin's guidance, Arthur knew that the trials of leadership were far from over. The balance between magic and politics, between what was just and what was necessary, would be tested time and again. Merlin, though powerful, understood the limitations of his own magic. "There will come a time when you must stand without me," he told Arthur one evening as they watched the stars. "Magic can guide you. It can protect you. But in the end, it is you who must make the choices. You who must lead." Arthur nodded, though the thought troubled him. He had come to rely on Merlin's wisdom. His magic had saved Camelot more than once. But deep down, Arthur knew Merlin was right. A day would come when he would have to face the challenges of kingship on his own. And when that day arrived, he would need to be ready. But for now, Arthur focused on building a kingdom worthy of legend. A Camelot where justice reigned and where his knights, bound by honor and duty, would stand as the protectors of all that was good in the world. The sword Arthur had pulled from the stone gleamed in the light of Camelot's great hall, but something about it troubled Merlin. It was a fine blade, strong and true, but it was not the legendary Excalibur, the true sword of kingship. That much Merlin knew. Arthur had earned his place on the throne, but his journey to secure Britain's future was far from over. One evening, as the fire crackled in Arthur's chamber, Merlin approached him, his face shadowed with concern. "The sword you wield is not Excalibur," Merlin said softly. "It may have granted you the throne, but there is another blade. A blade of immense power. One that will ensure your reign endures. It is hidden, far beyond these lands." Arthur looked down at the sword resting by his side, frowning slightly. "If this is not Excalibur," he asked, "then where is the true sword?" "In the hands of the Lady of the Lake," Merlin replied. "She is the keeper of Excalibur, a guardian of great magic. But to retrieve it, we must embark on a perilous quest. Only those who are worthy may claim it." Without hesitation, Arthur agreed. "Then we will go. If this blade can solidify my reign, I cannot delay. Camelot's future depends on it." Merlin nodded gravely. "Prepare yourself, Arthur. The road ahead is treacherous. Not just for you, but for all who follow." With that, Arthur gathered a small group of his most trusted knights. Lancelot, Gawain, and Percival rode beside him, their hearts steeled for the journey ahead. Together with Merlin, they set out at dawn, leaving the safety of Camelot behind them. The path was unknown, but the stakes were clear. Without Excalibur, Arthur's reign would be fragile, vulnerable to those who sought to undermine him. The journey led them through the thick, enchanted forests that lay beyond Camelot's borders. The trees twisted and bent unnaturally, their branches casting eerie shadows over the riders. Strange whispers echoed through the woods, though no one spoke. Every step they took seemed to lead them deeper into a land untouched by time, where magic flowed freely. As the days wore on, the land grew more dangerous. They crossed cursed fields where no crops grew, and the bones of ancient warriors lay scattered in the dust. At night, mythical creatures prowled the edges of their camp, their eyes glowing in the darkness. Arthur's knights stood guard, their hands never straying far from their swords. It was during one such night that Merlin sat alone, his staff resting on the ground beside him, his gaze fixed on the stars above. Arthur approached him, his face lined with weariness. "How much further?" Arthur asked quietly. "The men are strong, but this land wears on them." "Not far now," Merlin replied. "But know this, Arthur. The Lady of the Lake will not give you Excalibur easily. She will test you. Test your resolve, your wisdom. Only if she deems you worthy will the sword be yours." Arthur nodded. "I understand." The following day, they reached a shimmering lake. Its surface was impossibly still. the waters glowing with an ethereal light. It was a place untouched by the chaos of the world. A sanctuary of magic and mystery. As they dismounted their horses, Merlin led Arthur to the water's edge. "Wait here," Merlin instructed the knights. "Only Arthur may approach the Lady of the Lake." Arthur stepped forward, his reflection rippling in the water. The air was thick with silence. Suddenly, the surface of the lake parted, and from its depths rose a figure. The Lady of the Lake. Her form was radiant, her eyes ancient and wise. She moved with a grace that was otherworldly, her gaze fixed on Arthur. "You have come seeking Excalibur," the lady said, her voice soft yet filled with power. Arthur bowed his head respectfully. "I have, my lady. I seek the sword to protect my kingdom, to bring peace to the land." The lady studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "Many have sought this blade. Few have been worthy to claim it. Tell me, Arthur, what makes you think you are different?" Arthur hesitated. The weight of her question settled over him. He had been crowned king, yet the doubts of others still echoed in his mind. "I do not seek Excalibur for power," he finally replied. "I seek it for the people. To bring justice. To unite the realm. I do not claim to be without fault. But I am willing to sacrifice everything. Even my life. If it means securing peace for Camelot." The lady's eyes narrowed, as if she were peering into the depths of his soul. "And what of your heart, Arthur? Can you rule without letting pride or ambition cloud your judgment?" "I will try," Arthur said simply. "I am not perfect. But I will do my best to serve as a king worthy of this sword. Of this land." For a moment, the Lady of the Lake remained silent. Then, with a graceful motion, she extended her arm. From the water rose a magnificent sword. Excalibur. Its blade gleamed with an inner light, and the power that radiated from it was unmistakable. "Take it," the lady said. "But remember, the sword alone does not make you a king. It is your choices, your actions, that will define your reign." Arthur stepped forward and grasped the hilt of Excalibur. The moment his hand closed around it, a surge of power coursed through him. The weight of the sword felt both immense and light at the same time. He knew then that this was no ordinary weapon. This was the key to his future. To the future of Camelot. With Excalibur in hand, Arthur returned to his knights, who knelt before him in reverence. Lancelot spoke first. "The sword is yours, my king. There can be no doubt now. You are the rightful ruler of Britain." Arthur smiled, though the weight of the journey still clung to him. "We have much work to do," he said. "This sword will help us, but it will not fight our battles for us." Merlin watched silently, his eyes filled with pride and caution. "Excalibur will bring you great power, Arthur. But power is a double-edged sword. Use it wisely." As they made their way back to Camelot, the mood was triumphant. Arthur, now armed with the legendary Excalibur, was no longer just a king by chance. He was the chosen ruler. The one destined to unite the land. But even as they rode through the gates of Camelot, whispers of darker forces began to stir in the shadows, forces that would challenge everything Arthur had fought for. Camelot stood in its golden age, a shining beacon of hope and chivalry. The Round Table Knights, united under King Arthur's banner, embarked on noble quests that echoed through the annals of history. Together, they vanquished foes, righted wrongs, and protected the realm. Camelot thrived, its streets filled with laughter and the sounds of celebration. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The bonds of brotherhood began to fray. Lancelot, Arthur's most trusted knight, found himself at the heart of a brewing storm. His valor on the battlefield was unmatched, but it was his growing connection with Queen Guinevere that cast shadows over Camelot. Their friendship blossomed into something deeper, something forbidden. As they exchanged glances filled with unspoken words, the air around them crackled with tension. Merlin watched from the sidelines, his wise eyes observing the unfolding drama. He could sense the shift in the winds of fate, yet he chose not to intervene. He understood the nature of destiny and knew that some paths must be traveled, no matter how painful. "This is a test of the heart," he murmured to himself, and a harbinger of what is to come. As the seasons turned, the love between Lancelot and Guinevere deepened. The nights grew longer, and with them, their stolen moments became more frequent. They met in secret, wrapped in shadows, their whispers barely audible above the rustling leaves. Yet the weight of their hidden love loomed over Camelot like a dark cloud, threatening to break. One fateful night, under a silvery moon, their affair was exposed. A chance encounter revealed their secret to the court, and the news spread like wildfire. The halls of Camelot echoed with shock and betrayal. Knights whispered behind closed doors, some standing firmly by Arthur, while others found sympathy for Lancelot. The once united Round Table fractured, loyalty tested as alliances shifted. Arthur's heart shattered as the truth crashed upon him. He had trusted Lancelot like a brother, and the betrayal cut deeper than any sword. Confronting Lancelot and Guinevere was inevitable. In the grand hall of Camelot, where laughter had once reigned, an uncomfortable silence enveloped the room as Arthur faced them. "Lancelot!" Arthur's voice trembled with barely contained rage. "How could you betray me, and our friendship?" Lancelot's head hung low, shame etching lines across his face. "My king! I never intended for this to happen. It was never meant to hurt you." "Yet it has," Arthur replied, the pain evident in his eyes. "You have taken not just my trust, but my heart. Guinevere, you too have betrayed me." Guinevere stepped forward, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Arthur, I never meant to hurt you. I love you, but my heart belongs to Lancelot. I am so sorry. Your love is a poison to this kingdom," Arthur said, his voice hardening. "You have shattered the very foundation of Camelot. The unity we built is now crumbling." Merlin, watching from the shadows, felt the weight of the moment. The threads of fate pulled taut, and he understood that this was a turning point. Yet he could not intervene. The choice belonged to Arthur, as painful as it was. As Arthur wrestled with his emotions, the tension in the room grew palpable. Duty and honor demanded justice, but love still lingered in his heart. "I cannot allow this betrayal to go unpunished," he declared, his voice steady. "Lancelot, you are banished from Camelot. Leave now and never return." Lancelot's heart sank, and he dropped to his knees. "Arthur, please don't do this. I will never forget our brotherhood." "Brotherhood?" Arthur's voice rose, echoing in the hall. "You have chosen love over loyalty. You leave me no choice." Guinevere, her eyes wide with fear, fell to her knees beside Lancelot. "Arthur, please spare him. He has made mistakes, but he is still a noble knight." "Your fate is also sealed, Guinevere," Arthur said, his voice cold. "I cannot allow you to live after this treachery. You will face execution for your actions." The court gasped, and tears streamed down Guinevere's face as she pleaded. "Arthur, please. I love you. I have always loved you." As the weight of the moment bore down on him, Arthur's resolve wavered. The love he had for Guinevere clashed with the demands of his kingship. He turned away, conflicted, unsure of what was right. The once mighty king felt small, trapped between duty and love. Merlin stepped forward, breaking the silence. "Arthur," he said softly, "if you choose execution, it may haunt you forever. Is this the legacy you wish to leave?" Arthur's gaze met Merlin's, and in that moment clarity washed over him. "No. I cannot take her life." "Then show mercy," Merlin urged. "You are a king, and kings must sometimes be compassionate." With a heavy heart, Arthur relented, the shadows of doubt beginning to lift. "Guinevere, your life is spared, but you must leave Camelot and never return." The words tasted bitter, but they felt necessary. As Lancelot and Guinevere exchanged a final glance, the heartbreak was palpable. With heavy hearts, they turned away, leaving behind the life they had known, the love that had once flourished now reduced to sorrow. As the sun set on Camelot, Arthur was left alone in the grand hall, the weight of betrayal heavy on his shoulders. The knights of the Round Table whispered behind closed doors, the unity once cherished now but a distant memory. The love that had once brought them together now tore them apart. The kingdom stood on the precipice of change, the fragility of unity exposed. As Arthur stared into the distance, the lessons of love and betrayal echoed in his mind.